All right, Monero Matteo, welcome back. So we are in battle stance today. We've got so much going on, it's crazy. Now, one of the big slogans that we've used for the last 140 videos or so on this channel is we're ahead of the curve. People are going to figure this out. But honestly, now we're surfing the curve. We are like on top of things, and things are happening. Like things are rolling out right now the way that we've anticipated, man. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I'm very excited. The market still hasn't caught up yet, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the markets, which is rather bearish just for every asset except the dollar, really, because there's like a $20 trillion margin call on dollars, and everyone's got dollar-denominated debt. The dollar's going through the ceiling. People are having to sell treasuries, which starts this doom loop thing, and so, yeah, everything's going down except really the dollar, but honestly, with all the fundamentals happening for Monero right now, I'm not even paying attention to that, because if you are actually tuned into the super hyper mega bullish case that we've laid out here over the last year and a half, and you're aware of just the value that Monero has in the future that we've got coming up, then you're totally like blind to what's going on with the price. You're just continuing to solidify your position. And, frankly, I think that, as much work as we've done over the last year and a half, there's still recognition that needs to happen for a lot of people as to what's really going on with Monero, because a lot of people, they miss out. They think that Monero is just some other coin. It's like, oh, a privacy coin, cool, I can see how that has value. I don't want like the Eye of Sauron on me, and I don't want the technocrats figuring out what I'm doing. I get all that, but honestly, Monero, privacy coin, like, why do I need to get into it? It's like, okay, check out our video as to the 5 biggest reasons Monero is the king of crypto, or whatever that video is called. Go check it out. I mean, we talk about ASIC's resistance. We talk about the dynamic block size. We talk about the scalability and the cheap transaction costs. And CakePay is now coming out with, or Cake Wallet's now coming out with CakePay, making it so that you can transact in the US at 150,000 or so stores with your Monero. So it's really kind of crazy what's going on. And the fact that Monero is still at like a $2 billion market cap, guys, it's insane. But it really doesn't matter, like I told you guys before, because the fundamentals are better than they've ever been. And the amount of utility you're going to have with using Monero in this world that we're moving into, like the price in dollars does not matter. Because, again, if the shortages come because they start doing price controls, they start to ration, well, you're going to need to get into the black market to get what you need to do and to get what you need to get. And we saw that back in 2020 with the personal protective equipment flying off the shelves because people panicked and they were scared and they couldn't get the allotted amount that they needed to get at the stores because they started to ration the goods at the stores, if you remember, right? So where did all that go? Well, people started to gouge people on Amazon. The Amazonians kicked them off, and then they went to the dark webs, and they went to the black markets. And that's going to happen not for personal protective equipment, but for just about everything else, right? And increasingly, you're just going to want to transact off the system because you're not going to want to deal with the headache. Oh, no viruses. This is good. Thank you. But anyway, so yeah, you're going to want to just not deal with the headache that people are going to increasingly have because they're dealing with currencies which aren't fungible, right? And we're going to get into that today with this bro who's suing the, what is he suing, the SEC or the Treasury Department? Because he's like, oh, I got dusted Ethereum. Now I have to, furnish all these reports to the Treasury Department to prove I'm not a criminal, and then there are tax implications of that. And it's just wild, man. And he's suing them because he's like, it's not my fault I received this crypto. Okay, well, you're not, it doesn't make sense to sue the Treasury Department because you decide to buy into this theory that you're buying something which isn't an NFT. You're buying something which, everyone can track and trace and see what's going on. And, it's, we'll get into it. It's fun. It's fun. But the vindication is quite something. It's really quite something. Can't believe I've ranted for 4 minutes already. Just kind of goes to show you how excited I am about all this stuff. But, let's get into it. Let's get into it. First off, I just want to say thank you guys for all of the continued donations. It's really quite wonderful. And honestly, I'm not like an e-bag or anything like that. I put up like a 3-second clip of my Monero address at the very beginning of the videos. You guys don't have to go through advertisements. You guys don't really have to do much of anything. I try to make it as easy as possible for you guys to just get into the content. I no longer have a sponsor. But with everything that we've talked about coming to pass over the last year and a half, I really think we've kind of deserved a few of the donations. Not trying to be prideful, but guys, you don't have to donate yet. I get it. Monero, I mean, it's not exactly going vertical as we've anticipated yet. But when it really starts to happen, I'm going to say you guys should kind of check out that donation link a little bit. I think we've deserved it, but I'll leave it up to you guys. Anything is okay. I mean, there's this one guy who donates like 15 cents every video. I'm really appreciative of that. Kind of shows me that you guys are digging the content. You guys are getting value out of the stuff. But whatever, I'll leave it up to you guys. Whatever you want to do is what you want to do. But I want to get to somebody first who has a pretty good take on what's going on and kind of it checked in something for me at first. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm recording. Hush Hush Ape. This is the Mr. Ape Bro. He's a good follower of the channel. What's up, Mr. Ape? Love your takes, and especially this one. He says, Monero Bros are no longer early. Everyone else is just late at this point. Or he said something like that. And he's like, I don't want to be cordial with the transparent Ledger Bros anymore. I mean, if you don't get this yet, then you're just not going to get it at all. And frankly, I think they're going to get it increasingly. In fact, I think it was Timcast who recently had on Luke Rudowski, I think is his name, and they were talking about privacy coins. They were talking about Monero. So the word's getting out there increasingly. More people are talking about this stuff because it's just becoming a no-brainer. It's becoming obvious. And frankly, it's not even like we're ahead of the curve anymore. Like I said before, it's just like this all is happening. This is just like, what IQ do you need to have to piece this stuff together? But as I said before, it's not like people are dumb. I really don't believe a lot of people are dumb. I think they just don't have the nodes like in their vision yet to just piece things together. And again, it just takes education. It just takes getting the word out. And once people kind of like have a few dots on their screen, it's like, oh, I get this now. Cool. That makes sense. Monero, sweet. Let me get some of that. And that's all we're trying to do here is just piece dots together. And we're really not that smart. I really don't think we're that smart. We're just getting accustomed to good information. And we're just listening to people like the Money Today Show. We're listening to people like Stoic XMR. We're listening to people like Doug Tooman and Kevin Watt and Scylla from the Open Economy Initiative and just so many great people out there. But we're small groups of people. We're very small groups of people. We're essentially nobody. I mean, I know Luke Smith and people like that are out there, and they're really putting it together for a lot of people. I think he's got like 160,000 subscribers, which, by the way, Luke's going to be at the Orthodox Festival that we've got coming up this weekend. If you want to come meet him, it's at St. Mary of Egypt Orthodox Church here in Roswell, Georgia. It's going to be awesome. We're going to meet a whole bunch of people, blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. But we've got some good people out there getting the word out and Mental Outlaw and all that. But for the most part, we're small channels compared to the big Bitcoin bros out there who I like to call increasingly big coin. You know, it's sort of like an establishment type structure where it's like increasingly they're just opting for the gains rather than the freedom. At first, it was a good marketing ploy. It's like, oh, we're going to liberty. It's like our hodl hands are going to hold the world in its palm, and we're going to have this whole new beautiful world come about through hyper-Bitcoinization. It's going to be awesome, blah, 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 blah. Well, it's a bunch of crap. But anyways, there's starting to be some people who are asking, it's like, is this really going to lead us to freedom? Because I'm starting to think the only difference between Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies is that the Fed can't print it. It's like kind of a CBDC, isn't it? And let me ask this question. It's like, okay, well, if they can't print the Bitcoins, that's great. There's only 21 million. That's fine. But I guess they're still going to be able to tax the crap out of me, right? And if the Fed if they're not able to buy the government bonds in order to make it so that the government can continue to spend the way that they have over the last 10 years, well, how's the government going to get that money? Are they just going to stop spending? Or are they just going to tax the crap out of me? And then come up with unrealized capital gains taxes and wealth taxes and transfer taxes like we're going to get to here with Portugal. They want to do like a 4% transfer tax. That's something that's being considered. And remember, Portugal is like this tax haven for the crypto bros, and they're going to be so nice to the crypto bros. They're not going to have to pay any tax on your crypto. And remember, we predicted, 6-7 months ago, yeah, you're going to have to pay tax on your crypto. They're going to do 180. They're just doing that to freaking trap you in, and then they're going to, right. I mean, so predictable. But laser eyes, they see only the blights. They see only the blinders, right? 30,000 words. Let's just get into the content. I'm like high off how much great info there is. 30,000 words and 140,000 pages into the Monero Standard book. Pre-orders coming soon. This is from Stoic XMR. Great, bro. Do I have a knock on the door? Hold on one sec. All right. Sorry about that. I had to shoo away the KGB bros at the door. Yeah, as I was saying, Stoic XMR, he's a cool dude. Go give him a follow. He's writing a book called The Monero Standard. I hope it's good. I hope I get the opportunity to check it out and review it for the channel. I think that'd be kind of cool, right? But not many Monero books out there. I think you just really have the Mastering Monero book made by Sirhack, and then you've got this coming out, which is cool. So we've got more literature coming out. That's what's up. And then we've got Nick Watt's Fatal Glory, who we've talked about a little bit here on the channel. Friend of the channel, what's up? He said he made his wife scrambled eggs on toast this morning. Bought this delicious sourdough from a local baker from Monero. That's how you do it, ladies and gentlemen. We really got to get those food networks up and going, guys. You guys know about kind of what's going on with the food networks, I think, and how they're trying to centralize everything and how you're just starting to see this food processing plant blow up thing going on. Excuse me, just had dinner, but yeah, pretty crazy, right? But let's get into the news. Let's get into the content. This stuff is pretty crazy. And it's only going to get crazier throughout this video. I mean, just wait and see what I've got for you. Okay. Blockworks, Google to allow some customers to pay for cloud services with crypto early next year via Coinbase. Now, what's the key word here or key phrase? Because the Bitcoin bros are going to look at this and be like, oh my gosh, we've got more adoption. But I want you guys to notice something. It says via Coinbase. So you're not going to be able to pay with like your individual wallet or your self-hosted wallet. You have to go through Coinbase. And recall, a lot of people no longer have Coinbase accounts because Coinbase has locked those people out. You can't have a Coinbase account because some people have, they've taken their Bitcoin from Coinbase and they sent it over to places like TradeOgre. And then they get shut down because I guess TradeOgre is like a sketchy exchange. I don't know why. It's not like they have every privacy coin on there that you could possibly buy. There's no KYC or anything. But nevertheless, if you do sketchy stuff, or your Bitcoin comes from sketchy places without you even knowing where it's coming from, like maybe you get it off BISC or something, which is a peer-to-peer exchange, and you didn't do the data analytics to make sure this wasn't come from some like Ruski hacker bro, well, then you're going to have to put up with Coinbase's data analytics, and they may decide that they don't want you to have an account anymore. And so you're not going to be able to pay for your cloud services because I guess you got to do it through Coinbase. Now, why is it that they are making this decision? Well, think about it. Because of what we just talked about, Coinbase has data analytical companies like Chainalysis and CipherTrace working for them to make sure that the crypto which is coming onto the exchanges is safe and it's not tainted, okay? And so if that's the case, well, why would Google do the same thing when they could just hire Coinbase as sort of that outsourced service, which allows them to make sure that they're not getting any tainted crypto? So again, we're seeing the lack of fungibility start to play a role here in the centralization of how crypto is going to roll out. Because if corporates who have to abide by crazy regulations and they have to deal with OFAC and all this stuff, which we're about to get to again, well, they're going to want to make sure that they're not getting tainted crap. And they're going to want to make sure they know where their crypto is coming from because this stuff is very easily tracked and traced. Okay, so they're going to outsource that service, to the exchanges. They're going to make sure that you have a custodial account with one of these exchanges who are going to become basically the new banks of the century so that they can make sure that they are dealing with trusted parties. Okay, so we're going to start to see custodianship play into that paradigm there. But this is what I said. I said via Coinbase. So the corporates will only allow crypto payment through a KYC custodian. I guess this is how they will outsource the work of making sure they don't receive tainted crypto or provide services to sanctioned individuals or individuals who say the wrong thing on the internet, right? I mean, maybe you'll be able to at some point pay from your social media account, right? Because we've seen Jack Dorsey and other people talk about how they want to embed your crypto address into your Twitter profile or your other social media profiles. And Elon Musk, I think, recently was talking about how he wants to make like some X app, which is like the app to rule them all, right? Where you can do like finance stuff, social media stuff, banking stuff, business stuff, whatever, all in one app. Okay, and if that happens, you better not be saying the wrong thing, right? So it's kind of interesting what's going on. So we're seeing the KYC agenda come into play. And think about this. Think about this, right? So if Coinbase, which to sign up for Coinbase, I mean, I don't know if they do this yet because I don't use Coinbase much anymore, but you're going to have to give them your tax ID. And you're going to have to give them your social security information because a lot of what people do on Coinbase is taxable. And Coinbase, I think now, along with many other exchanges, have to issue tax documents to people who use the exchange. And so they're going to be issuing 1099s. And if they've got all your crypto activity linked with your tax ID, then it makes it that much more easier for the corporates to figure out who you are and also figure out everything else you're doing on chain. And if they can figure out everything else you're doing on chain, boom, Google, who's one of the biggest advertisers in the world, can benefit a lot from that. They can figure out what it is your transaction history and tendencies are, and so they can advertise to you services and goods, and then they can make a lot of money that way. And so you start to see the industry crop up. There's a lot of financial incentives to make this happen and to have this go the direction that it's going, towards centralization, towards KYC, towards third-party custodianship. That's how this is going to go. And as much privacy as people think that they're going to get with the Lightning Network, this is going to happen with that too. In fact, it's much more likely to happen with the Lightning Network, centralization, because of all the dynamics that play into that. You got to have liquidity channels, and you've got to vie for having the lowest fees, which creates an opportunity cost for whoever has the channels open, who can put up with the biggest amount of opportunity cost, well, those who scale to be the biggest, like the banks, and then they're going to be able to outprice everybody else. Everybody's going to go through these centralized nodes, and then they're going to become KYC, blah, 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 blah. You see how that's going to happen, right? So that's something to consider. Let's move on. Google's been doing something else rather interesting as well. You can now go onto Google, okay, and you can just put a crypto address into Google, and you can look up the balance. And by the way, you can look up the transaction histories. You can look up everything. And people are like, oh, this is just for Ethereum. No, no, no. Google has investments in blockchain.com, which is a blockchain wallet service provider, and it's also, I think, a block explorer service provider, so you can look up what's going on in the blockchain. And so this is all just playing into that whole thing. So yeah, you can now look up crypto addresses pretty easily. And it's interesting, some of the comments on here, because some people, I guess, didn't think that this was possible before now. They're like, oh my gosh, you can look up people's crypto addresses and you can see how much money they have? I didn't know that was a thing. It's like, okay, way behind the curve. But now it's easier than ever, which is making people wake up to the direction, again, this is going. So there's that. Well done, blockchain address is now available in Google search. Now, I'm not sure if this is sarcastic. And that's how bad things have gotten in the crypto world. It's like, is this guy being sarcastic, or is this guy genuinely excited? You don't know. You don't know anymore, because the one perspective is, oh, this is going to make us a whole bunch of money, guys. Google's now making it so that you can look up crypto addresses. Bro, we can look up each other's crypto addresses. This is sick. It's like, no, not at all. But, you know, it could also be sarcastic, in which case it's like, oh my gosh, we're screwed. You could have known. But, yeah, the Monero Bros were commenting, and they were saying, oh, you're pretty brainwashed to cheer this stuff on, and yada, 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 right? This guy. Now, this guy makes me giggle a little bit. This is a guy who I think had a switch flippantly. He's like, for some reason, this makes me a little more anxious than excited. LMAO. Why would it make you anxious? You don't like everybody looking up what you're doing with your money? You don't like Google and the big tech bros who are basically deplatforming people like Stalin, except with, like, you know, 21st century technology to know everything you're doing with your money? What could make you possibly nervous? Seems awesome to me, but check it out. I want to get into this for a sec, just so that you guys know how extended Google is. And it plays into what we've talked about before, as you're about to see with the digital currency group. So this is from blockchaincouncil.org. Google has invested in blockchain businesses, and they have surpassed $1.5 billion in total investment since September 2021. So here we go. According to the latest report, Alphabet, the Google parent, has poured almost $1.5 billion into the blockchain sector between September 21 and June 2022. And this is by far the maximum of any other publicly traded firm. Right, so that's quite significant. And who are they investing in? Okay, we actually did a video about Dapper Labs. It's a Web3 game company, and honestly, it's not too exciting a video. You don't have to go watch it, but we did talk about Google's investment in this, because we did find that they were investing in blockchain.com and Ripple, which was rather interesting. And we thought to ourselves, what are the implications of this? Why are they getting into this? And now we're starting to see it all kind of come together, right? But who else have they also invested in? Well, as you're about to see here, if I can find it, I think the digital currency group is somewhere in here. Perhaps I passed it. Oh, here we go. There are 4 major startups that have made it to the list of Google's prodigy, namely Fireblocks, Dapper Labs, Bitcoin Infrastructure. I'm not sure what Bitcoin Infrastructure means. Maybe they're talking about Lightning or something. I'm not sure. And then the Digital Currency Group. Now, MasterCard is also invested in the Digital Currency Group. We've done videos on it. I'm not going to go over it again. But Digital Currency Group has their hand in just about everything. MasterCard owns like 200 crypto projects. Basically, the legacy financial system totally taking over the new crypto world order. This is just more detail on that. So look at the graph. Google has invested $506 million in 2020 in the blockchain domain. And as per the latest update, banks and other financial institutions have also begun their research in investing in blockchain. Now, that's funny that they say that, because if you look at Money Today Show's channel, he's been doing great work on this. The banks have been involved in blockchain since 2014, okay? Look up R3. Look at when the Chinese began to develop their digital cryptocurrency, their CBDC. It goes back to 2014. They've been in this stuff, all the biggest banks. They've been working on blockchain since Bitcoin was like $100, before people knew about it. Like, this is before even the biggest of libertarians were getting on board and figuring out what this stuff was. This has always been a bank operation, okay? And I increasingly am of the opinion that the whole Bitcoin thing over the last 12 years, especially at having this sort of like libertarian-esque vibe and ethos to it, has been a psyop. I think it's been a psyop because now people are excited about crypto. And they're excited about transparent crypto, or they just don't care that it's transparent. They just think that because it's crypto and because it's Bitcoin, like, it's somehow going to be okay. It's all going to be fine. We just have to say no to the CBDC, and we just have to say yes to Bitcoin. Things are going to be fine. Okay, that's not, if you honestly think for 10 minutes about it, that's not how it's going to be. Because again, maybe you don't have to pay the inflation tax because maybe the central banks lose their power to print money, but the government's going to have to make up that tax shortfall somehow, which means they're going to be taxing your Bitcoin. Okay, and they're going to be able to do that easier than ever. Now, also, they are going to track what you're doing with the purchases we talked about before, because everything's going to be custodialized. There's going to be KYC everywhere, which means you're going to probably, if they go this direction, which I think is highly likely, it seems to be the direction that they're going, abide by the carbon limitations that they put on your purchases. And then a million other things, right? And people think like they cope. Like Oives in that video with Rafael Laverde and Oives, they were debating, and Toneves is like, oh, well, we're going to be able to track and see what the government's doing with our money. It's like, okay, well, they're going to be able to track what you're doing with your money, first off. Second off, you're not going to be able to do anything about what the government's doing with your money. Okay, you can't even do anything right now. Why would you think that if the government adopts Bitcoin, all of a sudden you're going to have control over what the government is doing fiscally? I mean, there have been reports which have come out from Dr. Mark Skidmore of the University of Michigan and Catherine Austin Fitts, which have said, yeah, the government has like $20 trillion in undocumented adjustments in their financial statements for the housing, Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Department of Defense. And this has been known since like 2001. If you actually look into it, like look into, I think it was like the day after 9/11, where Donald Rumsfeld came out there. He's like, yeah, by the way, sucks what happened, but we're also missing $6.5 trillion. Oh yeah, let's go bomb Iraq. You know what I mean? And yeah, they're just missing this money. But did anyone do anything about it? Was it reported? Did people protest about this? I mean, people protest about the silliest things, right? But they don't protest the fact that the government had lost like a generation of tax receipts. You know what I mean? Like, this is going to change all of a sudden with Bitcoin? I don't think so. I don't think so. But, and if you think that, you're going to be able to be private with your Bitcoin, I imagine there are going to be protocols in place for the government's funds to be private. If Bitcoin privacy does become somehow a thing, which I think is unlikely because it's almost impossible to be private with Bitcoin, well, the government's going to probably make it so that you can't be private, but they can. So I think that's a cope, but I'm going on a rant at this point. Let's get back to this. Since 2020, there have been a significant rise in the domain, which has been clearly and keenly observed by the leading investment institutions. Yeah, and as we talked about, State Street, BlackRock, Fidelity, a lot of the big institutional investors, they're getting into Bitcoin mining. And in fact, I think we're also going to get to this in this video as well. Foundry, which I think is invested in by the Digital Currency Group again, they are in control of like 25% of the American Bitcoin hash rate, or just 25% of the hash rate in general. We'll get to that. But yeah, institutions are totally getting involved. And it's rather interesting when you see the types of companies that the Digital Currency Group is invested in. You will see a lot of identity verification companies. You'll see a lot of exchanges. You'll see a lot of regulatory compliance blockchain companies and everything like this. So you can anticipate that's where everything is going because that's how they are investing. They anticipate this. So I want to go on to this. This is kind of funny. Live, love, laugh, and learn. This is from 1776 Pirate, friend of the channel. He says, I think I found a successful strategy for spreading awareness of Monero and privacy cryptos on Twitter. In my honest opinion, it beats buying Monero stickers that no one will ever look at. And so he basically just... there was some like Dogecoin channel that said, drop your Dodge wallet address. And somebody dropped their address like a doofus. And our bro, Pirate, tweeted at him. He's like, you have 132 Dodge in this address. Next time use Monero. And then the guy's like, I'm going to check Monero. So, yeah, some people like, they think crypto means like hidden or something like that, but it just means cryptography and they just don't know. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. Moving on. This is from Fubar, OX Fubar at Cool Bro, I guess. But he says, Celsius published a 14,000-page document detailing every user's full name, link to timestamp, and amount of each deposit, withdrawal/liquidation. This is a horrific breach of privacy and would lead to many being robbed and killed. And, maybe, I think... it is dangerous to have your information out there like that. People actually have been robbed because the financial information got out and they were tracked down and stuff like that, which is kind of freaky. But he then says anything not provably cryptographically private will become public. Right. And basically he's just shouting from the rooftops, buy Monero, as far as anyone's concerned. And yeah, this is kind of quite something. 14,000-page document of everyone who has interacted with Celsius. Okay? I mean, that's astounding. That is really, really astounding. And again, that does have a lot of risks. It does have a lot of risks. Because all this stuff is public information, basically. Anything that can be done on a public blockchain can and will be used against you. So yeah, kind of interesting. Never could have really happened with Monero. But then again, with Monero, if you're using a corporate entity like that and they have other information about you, because maybe you have to fill out some stuff if you're doing loans and all that stuff, maybe it could happen. But yeah, it's much easier with Bitcoin, obviously. David Hoffman from Bedrock. Now, this is the bro we were talking about earlier. Gotta take a breath. So he says, I'm suing the Department of Treasury. I got dusted from Tornado Cash, and now every year of my life, I am forced to file a report reaffirming that I'm not a criminal. Hilarious. I don't intend to waste my time like that. David Hoffman versus Janet Yellen. Let's dance. So is Janet Yellen going to make Ethereum private on the base layer? Is that what she's going to do? Because you understand this is not going to be the first instance of this problem occurring. It's not Tornado Cash, which is the issue here. Okay. I mean, literally, this could have been some Ruski bro who's on some like blacklist from the U.S. government who just sent you some Ethereum. Like he could have had tainted Ethereum. He could have just sent it to you, and then you would have been having to do this. So really, you're suing the Treasury Department because they sanction individuals and they just happen to use crypto. I mean, you might as well just sue them for that because that's the problem you're running into. It's a much more broad problem than, oh, they used Tornado Cash and they sent me a little bit of this dusted Ethereum. No, there's tainted crypto, which is deemed to be higher risk than other crypto because it's involved in criminal activity. And as far as I'm concerned, criminal activity isn't going away anytime soon, and their capacity to track crypto and being involved with criminal activity is increasing. So that problem is not going away. This problem is not going away, ladies and gentlemen, which is another reason why people are going to be more incentivized to use data analytical companies in order to scan the crypto that they've got coming in. They're going to be more incentivized to just use custodial service providers because the custodial service providers will at least do that service for them. And if they get any of that stuff coming into their account, well, maybe the exchange just shut down their account, but maybe they have some kind of like reference or some kind of like thing to go to the exchange and say, hey, you allowed this transaction to go through my account. Why didn't you stop it? Or why didn't you let me know? Isn't that what I pay you for? That kind of thing. I mean, it's going to be like, anyways, you could extrapolate all that. Or people just self-report. Like if they get crypto, they're going to be more incentivized to just tell the government, hey, I got this crypto from somebody off the street who came to do my shrubs. You know, I don't know if he's involved with like black market dealing of Tide Pods, but, you know, he looked a little sketchy when he came over. His eyes were drooping. So I want to make sure that you understand that I got some crypto from him in case like it's tainted or whatever, right? You know what I mean? So, you know, you got to defend yourself from the Tide Pod bros. I mean, they could have crypto you don't want in your wallet, right? But this is what's going on. This is a serious issue. And this is a deeper issue than what this guy is making it out to be, because check this out. This is a clip from CoinDesk talking about this issue. It says, Ethereum users like Mr. Hoffman have no ability to reject incoming transfers. Exactly. So the criminalization of Tornado Cash empowered someone else to implicate Mr. Hoffman and force reporting obligations on him by causing him to receive an asset from a sanctioned entity. Right. So that, how are you going to fix that? How are you going to fix that problem? Does anyone have a solution? Does anyone have an answer to this? Because the phenomenon of entities being sanctioned is not going away. The phenomenon of there being criminals is not going away. The phenomenon of tainted crypto is not going away. It's only been increasing actually since data analytical companies have been more involved with exchanges and with law enforcement, etc. So that problem is only going to get worse. There's nothing about this suit which is going to solve any problem. It's just going to make it so that he doesn't have to file a report because of the dusted Ethereum that he got sent into his wallet. It doesn't fix anything structural. You can't. How are you going to do it? Unless you add privacy to the base layer and make it fungible. But I don't think that's going to happen. There's nobody talking about that right now, except for the Monero Bros, and more people are going to wake up to this. And it has licensed, continuing with this, and it has licensed anyone else who wishes to harass or inconvenience Mr. Hoffman to continue to send crypto assets through Tornado Cash to Mr. Hoffman's publicly known address, each time triggering potential liability and reporting obligations. Exactly. Okay, so it's not even just like, oh, I'm getting crypto from some criminal bro or some terrorista. It's, I'm getting crypto at all. Like you're getting crypto. Maybe you've like diligently worked with your tax advisor to make it so that you don't go into a certain tax bracket, and you've estimated how much income you have, how much income you're going to be receiving for the rest of the year, and you've done all the projections, and all that stuff's expensive, by the way, but you've done everything to make it so that you can plan accordingly to make sure you don't get into an extra tax bracket. And then boom, December 30th, 2022, you get some transaction coming into your crypto wallet that you didn't ask for, and then boom, that sets you into the next tax bracket. Okay, that's income. Like people who find gold on the bottom of the sea, right? It's not like the IRS just lets you scoop that up and then just like dance into the sunset with your basket of gold. That's not how it works. Anything that you get is income unless you can deem it to be a gift. But if it's over a certain amount, then a gift tax report has to be filed, and you got to know information about who it is that sent you that gift, right? And so you see the problems, right? Now, free money, that's usually not a problem. But I'm just saying, like, this stuff has implications. Because if you get money coming into your wallet randomly, you've got to pay tax on that, unless you can prove that it's a donation or a gift. So, anyways, this has implications. This has implications, all part of the problem of it being totally transparent, not fungible. Excuse me. Candace Owens. So this was interesting news recently. Let me take a drink. So Kanye West got debanked from JP Morgan. Now I know. He talked about the people who couldn't be talked about, right? And the people who couldn't be talked about who run JP Morgan Chase, they didn't like that, and so they debanked him. Now, that's the real story. And, you're going to have people like Candace Owens saying, there's no official reason given, and no one's going to want to say what actually happened. But ultimately, he got debanked because he said the wrong things about the wrong people. And there are protected classes of people here in America and in the West that you just can't talk about. Really, it's all over the world. But there are certain things you just can't say. And if you say them, you're going to pay steep consequences. Okay? And, it's sort of that Voltaire quote. It's like, if you really want to know who's in charge, determine who it is you're not allowed to talk about. But anyways, without going into that whole thing, he got deplatformed. So Kanye West gets debanked. Like one of the biggest musicians in the world gets debanked because somebody didn't like his tweets. Right? And as we're going to see, that's a more common trend. Because PayPal recently, and they went back on this because I honestly think this is some kind of like trial balloon to gauge how much people are going to freak out, how much people, will react to this. And it turns out they reacted quite harshly. But they said that they would fine people $2,500 for promoting misinformation or promoting what they deem to be harassing or bullying or obscene or whatever content. Okay. And they even said in the agreement that they had put out that it was solely up to PayPal's discretion how that's defined. Now, again, they went back on this. But, that's an indication of what's to come, I think. And so many people quit PayPal. I think that was great. Obviously, Monero is the solution to this. Duh. But, yeah, it's really quite interesting. It's really quite interesting that you've got that going on. At the same time, Kanye West gets shut down at JP Morgan. And Wokeness says this is why they want a cashless society. We must reject it now before it's too late. Now, think of what's going to happen if all your finances get intertwined with your social media, right? Or with your social credit or your taxpayer identification. Like, there's no privacy in finance anymore. I mean, just think about the implications of that with just how crazy our society has become and how fragile and how sensitive and really how authoritarian it's all become. So that's something to consider. Obviously, Monero is just super key. Stealth addresses, ring signatures, blah, blah, blah. Okay, go check out the deep tech if you really want to understand this stuff. But we talked about that. Okay, what's next? Celsius reveals names, transaction histories of thousands of customers in public court filings. We just went over that. It's from the crypto briefing. Not ideal. You guys understand that. A little bit more on the implications of Lightning Network. This is from Seth for Privacy. He says, one of the more frustrating things about the complexity of Lightning is that it leads to quote-unquote solutions like this being the norm for broader usage. Give up custody and control your sats to say you're using Lightning. Right, and it's going to be mostly custodial because running your own node on Lightning is freaking impossible for 90% of the people. Whether it's because they can't get access to the hardware that you need because they live in like a third world country and you've got to rely on Chivo in order to transact because you don't have the money to set it up, really. Or, it's just too complicated to figure it out with the liquidity channel monitoring and all that stuff. So Seth says it's just PayPal 2.0 in most cases. And given what we just said about PayPal, is that really the censorless and freedom coin kind of thing that you have been hearing about in regards to Lightning? No, not really. And we've talked about here on the channel how people who have been working on Lightning, they've been saying, yeah, it's still kind of like a science experiment. The privacy is not there. There's still some iffiness going on with the functionality where people, they can't find a proper route to go in order to transact. And I've heard that from other people like Saturnity. He's also a cool bro. Give him a follow. But he uses Lightning, and sometimes he has issues too. And I recall recently Lightning had been shut down, like for the most part, because of some weird thing going on with somebody's node or something. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. Now, if you want to use Lightning and if you can do it privately, that's fine. Go ahead, knock yourself out. I don't have any problem with that. But the thing is, simplicity, as Leonardo da Vinci said, is the most ultimate sophistication. Me, as just an average guy who works, who has a life, I mean, I can't get into all that stuff. I'm not about to read the 60,000-page Bitcoin privacy guide. Are you serious? And how do you expect most people to have the time for that or the patience when you've got Monero right here, which is plug and play private? Why would you frustrate yourself unnecessarily like that? Now, I think the argument is, well, Bitcoin's going to be the big thing, obviously, and so might as well be in the big thing and learn how to use it privately rather than be in the small thing, which maybe works better but just isn't as popular. It's sort of like the whole, well, I'd rather just be on the internet using like some VPN or something like that, rather than use Tor and go through like the hoops of being like really private or something like that. There is that argument which came from, I think, Tone Vase, but the internet is not the same as cryptocurrency. It's not the same as finance, because with finance you need to have fungible currency, which means it has to be private on the base layer. It's non-negotiable. Really is non-negotiable. We're going to see more of these cases continue to crop up, which very much complicate the utility of this monetary system, right? But anyways, it's just simple. Use Monero. It's private. You don't got to worry about anything. Preferably just don't transact on exchanges, but I think you guys know that, right? So Doug Tuman, he says, more why Monero matters. News. Masses will slowly realize why this is terrifying. Monero will be waiting in the wings. Pro tip, a hyper-surveilled, regulated, transparent Bitcoin network is not the solution. Think it through. All roads lead to Monero. I think that's a good take. And if you want to check out what PayPal had released, I made this picture. I don't know if you guys can see it because of my picture, but you'll see. It says, in PayPal's sole discretion. It's up to them to determine what's harmful, obscene, harassing, objectionable, whatever. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? I thought to myself, it's like, how's that even legal? How can they do that? I just don't even get it. But maybe some lawyer bros were like, hey, that's not going to work. I mean, this Better Call Saul bro that you hired to make this statement, you better fire him. That don't make sense. So let's get to Portugal now. Oh, boy, Portugal. Did we not tell you this was coming? Now, they still haven't passed this, so we don't know what's going to happen. But, there are these places that I think offer favorable treatment to the crypto bros, whether it's Puerto Rico or right now Portugal. But as we've been warning about, they're not going to let all that tax revenue or potential tax revenue just sit there. Because increasingly, countries are going to need the money, especially if they are emerging market economies or just Europe, which is increasingly becoming an emerging market economy, especially if you look at the UK. They're going to need that money. And if we go into a world, again, where they can't print the money anymore, then they're just going to tax you, okay? And they're not going to give you that favorable tax treatment. And if Bitcoin really does become like some kind of world reserve currency, which I'm very skeptical about, then they're going to do transfer taxes. And if they don't do those taxes, well, it's going to be very difficult to use Bitcoin, in my opinion. Like, how are you going to do it? It's completely relying on the scalability of the Lightning Network, which hasn't been proven yet. So, not to get into that whole thing, I started to wonder. But this is from the Coin Bureau. He says one of the last few pro-crypto EU countries moving to the dark side. Yeah, so the Portuguese government is considering a 20% tax on crypto gains starting in 2023, which is quite a lot. I mean, that's the same tax rate here in the United States of collectibles and art and stuff like that. Just rather interesting. The tax does not apply to any crypto held for more than 1 year, so that's kind of good. You get 0% tax for long-term capital gains, but you got to pay 4% tax on crypto transfers if they pass this, which is interesting. Now, I tried to look that up because what qualifies as a crypto transfer exactly? And I went to thebalancemoney.com, and basically you're talking about gift tax, you're talking about real estate property transfer taxes, estate taxes where, there's an inheritance which is passed from one generation to another. So it's talking about stuff like that. But if every transaction is like that, you're going to be paying a lot of tax. You got to pay 4% of the value that you're transferring every single transfer. I mean, that's obscene. You guys understand that? Like, you can't possibly make a currency out of that. And that damns it to be just some like arbitrary HODL asset. You know what I mean? So I can't see that being very useful. But what's this? Portugal plans to impose a 28% tax on crypto gains. This is from Yahoo Entertainment. So I just want to confirm this story. But 28% is the standard capital gains tax in the country, which is really quite a lot, Standard, maybe not even factoring in your income. That's quite something. I would have to look into that. I'm not familiar with Portugal taxes, really. Okay. Over the past decade, Portugal has become an appealing destination for international residents who have flocked to the country due to its more favorable visa and immigration options and overall affordability. Portugal saw a massive 40% increase in immigration from 2011 to 2021. And I'm sure that's not all crypto bros. It's probably, there are probably some Congo bros in there. But if Monday's draft budget is approved, it remains to be seen how the new policies will affect Portugal's crypto economy, and if it will face an exodus like India as companies and investors flee to lower tax nations. Interesting. Let me know what you guys think about that. I'm curious what you guys think. Like, if you guys were to move anywhere in the world for favorable tax treatment, where would you go? Puerto Rico? Like, what other countries have more favorable tax treatment? I actually haven't researched this. Maybe I should. This is from Howard Chu. He's got a good thread here I want to read. This is very interesting. It kind of puts a lot of things together that we've talked about, but it's very coherent. So he says, oh, and also, or no, he's got a whole thread here. Let's start from the beginning. He says, he's responding to Dr. Craig Wright, who said something interesting. He said, what people fail to understand is that no system acts outside of the existing system. So-called privacy coins will simply be excluded from the majority of exchanges in the future. Now, those are two distinct statements. That's not one coherent statement, as you may think, because the first statement, that there's no system that acts outside the current existing system, is not true, because the black market economy is $250 billion a year. Like, the black market, by definition, is a system which acts outside the existing current system. So that's refuted right there. We don't have to expand on that. But then he says so-called privacy coins will simply be excluded from the majority of exchanges in the future. Yeah, okay, sure. I think Monero Bros are fully aware of this. Now, Trade Ogre, we're really looking out for you. We're really hoping that you can keep things together. I mean, Trade Ogre is just amazing. Don't we love Trade Ogre? Operating sort of under the shadows there for as many years as they have. No exit scams, no problems. They allow crazy amounts of wash trading, but that's a whole other thing. You got to put up with what you can in order to get the great access to the lovely privacy coins that you can in the privacy non-KYC way that you can. It's really amazing. I mean, I have a love for Trade Ogre. They're on my prayer list, but which, by the way, there was the Crypto Vigilante who came out recently, and they're advocating to Trade Ogre to set up Monero trading pairs. Because if I remember properly, they've been working recently on setting up USDT trading pairs, because at first they only had Bitcoin trading pairs, then they had Litecoin trading pairs, and then they set up USDT trading pairs so that you can basically trade dollars for these cryptos. But the Crypto Vigilante is going to them to try to set up Monero trading pairs. And if they do that, with all the stuff going on with major exchanges having to issue 1099s now to people who are trading on the exchanges, I think Trade Ogre could become very popular. Now, there's also another exchange waiting in the wings that I need to get an update on called Havana. It's a private decentralized peer-to-peer exchange. Monero Fork Abyss, so it's going to be totally private by default. I still have to see what's going on with that because it's been a little while. I'm kind of anticipating the outrolling of that. I think that's going to be a big deal. But there are other decentralized exchanges popping up like Sarai Exchange, Thorchain. Decentralized exchanges are going to be the future. But the thing is, and this is something that I've been wondering and kind of concerning myself with regarding the decentralized exchanges and atomic swaps and all that stuff, is if you're a Monero bro, are you going to want to take the risk of getting out of your Monero into one of these surveillance coins, which is being increasingly tracked and traced and monitored for tainted activity or risky activity on one of these decentralized exchanges? Because that's going to open you guys up to risk. Because that could be the only way that people who have tainted coins are able to get out of those coins into something like Monero to then get back into another crypto or get into dollars by taking that Monero, getting some other Bitcoin, which maybe they have the analytics to figure out isn't tainted, and then go onto an exchange and then they get the cash. Or maybe just go on local Monero or something like that to get the cash. But like, there is a risk to using a DAX if you are a Monero bro to get some of these other cryptocurrencies increasingly. But if you are somebody who's trying to access Monero, it's good for you. But I think you're going to have to pay increasingly a premium for that, because if they continue to delist Monero on these exchanges, which is something that South Korea seems to be spearheading with Huobi Global, and then you saw the delisting in the UK with Kraken. If that becomes a common thing, then you are going to have to pay a premium for Monero. And actually, I think the value of Monero is going to go significantly upwards, whether it's in dollar terms or it's in awesome, I've got Monero, which is very hard to get. I'm a G. You know what I mean? So that's something I'm thinking about right now. But this is what Howard Chu has to say about this. He says, what Craig and the rest of the Bitcoin NGU cult fail to understand, and NGU's number go up, cult fail to understand is that change only happens by working outside of the existing system. And I think there's a good statement about that. I think that is what makes sense. There's a lot of like libertarian bros who want to like take over the government and like change it or like dissolve it from within. And then there are a lot of libertarian bros who are like agorists, and they want to set up like parallel economies outside the system and create their own sort of libertarian structure independent of the system, which I think makes more sense. And then the way that the Christians took over the Roman Empire is they created their own system outside of the state. It was called the church. And I don't want to get into theology or anything like that, but basically their system pretty much took over the system after 400 years of martyrdom and suffering. I get it, but that's how change is done. It's by saying the system is beyond repair. They're going in the direction that they're going. It's on its own S-curve lifespan. But what we're going to do is we're going to start our own system. And when we're on our adoption phase and we're moving up that S-curve, then our wave, right, is going to drown out the dying system which came before. And then the takeover happens. But I think he's making a good point here. It's sort of like an Operation Exodus type deal that he's advocating for. So Howard Chu, he says, Bitcoin will never be the money of the future because it's already been co-opted by the existing system. And that's going to become increasingly apparent. I think he's right. The fact that Monero is already excluded from the majority of exchanges is a positive, not a negative. He says, since the majority of exchange volume is fake wash trading, which is basically spoofing, the less exposure Monero has to centralized exchanges, the less volatile its price, and the more real its price. And that's something I thought about recently, too, where it's like, with all of this demand increasingly to either talk about Monero or to get Monero, or just potential demand out there because of everything that we've been talking about, everything that we're seeing, the Bitcoin bros, I think, should be a little bit nervous by this. Because Monero is continuing to take over the dark web marketplaces where Bitcoin got its start. Monero is increasingly becoming the resilient crypto which can survive whatever attack comes at it. It's continuing to attract interest from a lot of very prominent people. We talked about here on the channel how a hedge fund bro, a guy who founded a hedge fund, basically said, yeah, we're in a Monero, or at least I am. I don't think his fund was, but he was. I'm in a Monero because this is what everyone thought Bitcoin was. So you're starting to see more awakening. But Monero is still at a $2 billion market cap. It could be that Monero, because it's not on all these exchanges and you don't have all this tether stuff involved, which could be a problem, which I've looked into a little bit. There could be like that whole tether thing, this whole tether market holding up the Bitcoin market. I don't know about that. I'm not like tether conspiracy bro, but let me know what you guys think. But it could be that Monero's supply and demand free market dynamics are actually real, like very real, and actually express the demand people have for real cryptocurrency. And if that's the case, and Monero is fairly priced at the $2 billion market cap, then the Bitcoin bros should get nervous and ask themselves, is this cryptocurrency really worth $400 billion or whatever it's purported to be worth by the market? Because it could be that there's just it's still an insane amount of speculation happening. And I think that is largely the case. But we'll see. I'm not the market. I can't determine the price of these things. I'm just speculating. And I'm not like a chart astrologer. I don't do that stuff. That's not my wheelhouse. But this is something I'm thinking about. It could be that Monero isn't significantly undervalued, which I really do think it is. I mean, even if it's not relatively undervalued to Bitcoin, it's relatively undervalued to the demand it should have in this future that we're moving towards and all the use cases for it. But still, I mean, it could be that Bitcoin is just way overvalued. Anyways, so moving on, he says it also eliminates points of control that governments might use to exert leverage over the coin. Right, so being delisted from exchanges actually gives it an opportunity to become more resilient, decentralized, and robust before the crackdown even really begins. Now, if the crackdown really began all at once, all of a sudden, on all these exchanges that Monero is still on, that could cause a problem. But the fact that it's happening slowly is kind of giving people an opportunity to come up with things like Haveno and these decentralized exchanges, which I think is good because, if all the exchanges decide all of a sudden, hey, we're getting rid of Monero, there's already an infrastructure in place. And then he goes on to say, and as Alex aptly observes, despite all these delistings, Monero still has users. Right. In fact, its usage continues to grow, and this from Morpheus saying Monero's dominance over other privacy coins is hitting all-time highs, currently near 70%, considering itself Zcash, Dash, and Grin. Now, I don't know how private Grin is. The Bitfinex bro, actually, no, it wasn't the Bitfinex bro, it was somebody else. Somebody got caught trying to wash out the Bitcoin through Grin. It didn't work. Dash, we know, isn't private, duh. And Zcash, only 3% or so of the transactions are actually private for Zcash. So I don't know how even these are considered privacy coins, really, but nevertheless, moving forward. Oh, and also, in addition to the fake trading volume on exchanges, there's the problem of non-existent coins being sold, which we talked about. Go check out our Monero market manipulation video. We really go into the deets on that. There seems to be good evidence that there is manipulation going on. Now, whether it's for profit or whether it's to fulfill some kind of agenda in order to taper down interest and demand in Monero, that's still suspect. But I think we, going through the evidence and our talks with Body Anarchist and Kevin Wad, kind of seem to flesh out a decent case to be made that there is manipulation going on with the price. And it could be, again, for profit. It could be for some other agenda. I don't know. But there seems to be some weird stuff going on anyways, which, again, Monero is combating by pushing for deployment of decentralized exchanges and abandoning centralized exchanges. So, yeah. And, again, it's interesting. We talked about this a couple of videos ago, but Brian Armstrong, who's the chairman of Coinbase, he came out and said recently, yeah, the best crypto that the world could adopt is basically a crypto which is by default private, because the internet was HTTP at first. That caused a whole lot of problems, but now we have HTTPS, and that's what Monero basically is, HTTPS. And he was advocating for it. He's like, wouldn't a privacy crypto be great? It's like, yeah, it would be, Brian. You should actually list one rather than Doggy Coins and Marge and Dogelon and Mars Coin or whatever. But, it's notorious that he doesn't have Monero on his exchanges. And at first, I was a little like, man, that'd be great if Monero was on the centralized exchange, wouldn't it? Because that would give a lot of more people the opportunity to get access to it. But really, it could be a blessing in disguise, because it's sort of giving us the opportunity to look to other solutions which are more robust. So I think that's really a good thing. And Howard Chu has been right about that all along. I remember a comment he made to me, must have been like a year ago, where he's just like, no, Matt, you don't understand. This is actually a good thing that Monero is not being listed on Coinbase. And I was like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think it'd be cool. But, I think he was right. But so despite everything being done to limit access to Monero, its usage continues to grow. Yeah, so look at the transactions per day. It's continuing to go up. This is from the Monero Club. I want to make sure I source. But look, transactions per day continuing to increase. And Monero Google search trends on the sharp decline ever since 2018. Now, I think he's saying this in a way where it's like he's suspicious if there's something going on. I'm not sure. I'm not too suspicious of that. It could just be the price action isn't really exciting people, so they're not really looking up Monero. I think that's probably actually more likely the case, because people respond to price movements more than anything when it comes to crypto, rather than the fundamentals, unfortunately. But, there could be some conspiratorial thing going on. I'm not sure. And Howard ends, he says, and where privacy and security really count, Monero has nearly 100% dominance, and Bitcoin is just yesterday's failed tech. Yeah. So Bitcoin Darknet subscribers, Monero Darknet subscribers. Yeah, Monero is definitely beating out the competition. So yeah, pretty significant, pretty significant. Now, let's move on to a couple more interesting news items before we wrap up. Let's see, what's this? Oh, I think this is what is this? Oh, I think this is the story about the UK starting to track um, people's use of transportation and limiting people and how it is they can use public transportation because of their sustainability goals or something like that. I don't really want to get into all that. You guys know it's coming anyway. Doesn't matter. And I found something interesting on digital IDs. Apparently, here in Georgia, they're starting to issue digital license plates. And it's kind of funny because you're still going to have to carry your metal license plate around with you everywhere you go. But apparently, they're starting to make it so that the back of your car could have like one of those digital screens. Like, you guys ever drive around and like you see a car, it's got like a TV on it basically, and it's got like an advertisement. Well, the digital license plate is going to be somewhat similar to where it like goes on the back of your car, and it's like a screen that's hooked into something else which receives some wireless telecommunication. And it'll have your license plate number, but it could also pull up, um, your location history. It could look up the status of your emissions testing and all this stuff. So, that's kind of interesting. That I was just looking up the newest tax trends yesterday on Twitter, and like this page had talked about Georgia rolling out with Florida and some other red states. Interestingly enough, these digital license plate, which is rather a surprise to me. But yeah, let's check out what's going on with our competition real quick. What competition? I don't know, but Zano, he says the Zcash spam attack continues. Almost every block contains a shielded transaction with hundreds of outputs. In doing so, the spammer can successfully blow up the size of the chain by maxing each 2 megabyte block every 75 seconds. And the cost of each spam transaction less than a cent. So at least it's cheap. I mean, at least Zcash is cheap, but they can spam the blockchain. That's essentially what they're doing. And the implications of that are interesting. You can go into all that here. But our friend Peter Todd, who we talked about recently, he makes an interesting comment on something that Zubro had said. And I forgot what the guy's name was. It's like Zuki or something like that. But he's the guy who's basically like the biggest evangelist for Zcash, which, by the way, is run by a corporation, which got PPP funds. I think, Mike, you pointed that out to me a while ago. But I was like, what? They got PPP funds? This cryptocurrency company? But they did. I looked it up. And, yeah, so ECC is the corporation behind Zcash. That's not very cypherpunk, bro, but that's apparently the case. But they said the vast majority of Zcash users are unaffected by the increased size of the blockchain. So that's what the corporate guy said who evangelized this stuff. And Peter Todd caught this. He said, this is a pretty incredible statement by Zcash. If the vast majority, quote unquote, of users are unaffected, the vast majority aren't using shielded transactions and aren't running full nodes. They're basically saying that Zcash isn't used for privacy. Right. And Seth for Prophecy pointed this out quite a while ago when he noted that just about 3% of all the transactions, or no, I think maybe that's another data point. But he said this. He said Monero protected sender-receiver amount in 693,425 transactions in March of this year, while Zcash protected only 4,000 or so. Monero has 5 times the privacy-preserving transactions per day than Zcash had all month. So yeah, nobody's using this stuff for privacy, basically. Yeah, okay, so he says here, 97% of transactions aren't private on Zcash. So, again, can you call it a privacy coin is the question. I don't know. But let's get to this story. This is kind of interesting. And, also interesting is like people start to wonder if Monero Bros were behind the Zcash attack. I don't think so. I really don't think Monero Bros need to attack any other crypto blockchains. And if you remember in the last video, there was a Bitcoin bro who wanted to get a grant for attacking the Monero blockchain. And again, this guy hasn't looked into the research which has been done into this in the Monero community, dynamic block size, and all this stuff. He's just like, let's attack the Monero blockchain, wipe it out, and then everyone's going to come to Bitcoin. Like, that's literally where they're at. So, kind of interesting, Do we have many more stories to go? I wanted to read this thing by Howard Chu. Yeah, this is a theme that we've also been talking about here for quite a while. The centralization of Bitcoin mining. We've made a ton of videos about it. And people have been talking about this since 2008. It's not like I'm ahead of the curve on this. It's just people forgot that this was a thing, I think. People got so focused on the money and the number go up and all that that they forgot that the increased KYC and the centralization and the uh, blockchain becoming more difficult to mine and the rising energy costs and the rising costs of the ASICs and all this stuff. It's leading to fewer profitable marginal miners. And as the price of the Bitcoin has gone down recently, it's knocked out even more marginal miners, centralizing those who can do this stuff at scale, which means more corporates are basically taking over the Bitcoin blockchain. So even the Bitcoin bros are like, oh, well, the Ethereum blockchain is being totally centralized because of proof of stake, which is true, but it's also happening on the Bitcoin blockchain. So ASICs resistance mining, which Howard Chu basically invented for Monero with RandomX, is really starting to shine and kind of make this stuff make sense. But he says centralized KYC corporate mining, Monero fixes this. Right, because Foundry, this is from Odell, Foundry already represents 25% of the Bitcoin hash rate, a US-based full KYC mining pool popular with large corporate miners. This move elevates centralization concerns since new hash added via this entity will be directly controlled by them, and they are a prime target for US regs. And again, some people have commented how a lot of these big Bitcoin miners, these corporates, are already OFAC compliant. They just haven't really said anything public. They've already anticipated this happening. Now, I don't know if that's true, again, but it could be happening. I mean, we've already seen a precedent for this set with Marathon Mining, but we don't know. We don't know. Would the Bitcoin Bros be able to do anything about this? I don't know. But, I mean, they were able to get Marathon to renege on being a OFAC mining compliant pool, but I think this is going to be more normalized as Russia enters the space and all this stuff with sanctioning starts to get more serious and that kind of thing. Anyway, so let's just read this real quick because this is kind of interesting. You're going to run into the digital currency group again. It was launched via the newly founded Grayscale Digital Infrastructure Opportunities, a private co-investment opportunity in mining hardware that powers the Bitcoin ecosystem. GDIO will use invested capital to purchase mining equipment as it becomes available for sale in the coming months at what is likely to be discounted prices. So again, they can scale their operations. They can get ASICs on the cheap because they're buying a lot of them, and they have close connections in the supply chain to whoever is manufacturing them, I suppose. And they can get deals on energy, maybe from the cities because they're using a lot of excess energy apparently. And they can mine this stuff more efficiently and effectively than the marginal miner who's setting this stuff up in their garage. And just as an aside, I'm a tax pro, so why not talk about this? There's another CPA on Twitter who was talking about how it would be a good idea if you wanted to get some easy tax breaks to set up a like a crypto company and to make mining part of your operation. He basically said get a 0 APY credit card, buy $50,000 of miners, do bonus depreciation so that you can deduct $25,000 or so off your profits in that first year, and then you can have a lot of tax savings. Basically, that's what he was saying. But that's highly risky, and I want to let you guys know why. So first off, the marginal miner, as we talked about, is being increasingly priced out, whether it's because Bitcoin has been cut in half as far as value, or the energy costs, or the ASICs rigs become more expensive because of the scarcity of the chips, or the difficulty in the hash becoming ever higher, and the competition, and that becoming ever more ferocious. It's going to become harder for the marginal miner to make a successful business out of this. And if you don't, and at some point you got to pay off that debt, which that APY, that 0% APY wears off at some point, well then, first off, you're going to have higher interest rates because the Fed is raising rates. So that's going to be a problem. But also, you're going to have to recapture that depreciation. And you recapture that depreciation at ordinary income rates. So if you are making a good bit of money elsewhere on your taxes, assuming like this isn't some kind of like corporation that is doing its own thing, well, you're going to have to recapture that depreciation, which means that $25,000 in depreciation deduction that you had in the prior year, whenever you sell those rigs back in order to try to get money to pay those debts, you're going to have to recapture that depreciation, which basically means the basis on the rigs have gone down relative to the amount of depreciation you had taken. And so if you had taken 50% depreciation and you're now at $25,000 in basis and you sell those things back for, let's say, 30 grand, you're gonna have to pay 5 grand on that stuff, as well as the taxes that you got to pay on whatever gain. So it's interesting. It's interesting. So I could go into more of the detail of that, but anyways. Foundry, which runs one of the biggest mining pools, Foundry USA, will manage day-to-day operations of the new entity, which is the first of its kind for Grayscale. Foundry and Grayscale are both subsidiaries of the Digital Currency Group. Boom. Digital Currency Group back in action. Anything else I want to talk about? I'm just kind of bursting through this stuff. Oh, there's somebody new that I wanted to mention here who I've liked the tweets of. Oh, Zano, he says OFAC compliance is around the corner. Yep, good take. I like Zano. He's cool. All right. Bum, 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 bum. I'm trying to think if I explained that depreciation. Yeah, you got to recapture it back. And you're going to have to pay ordinary income, which for a lot of people is going to be like 39.6%. And then you're going to have to pay the gain on everything else. So anyways, yeah, I can go into the details of that. But anyways, very risky idea. I probably wouldn't do it. Breaking, EU announces new sanctions on Russia, banning all Russian Bitcoin wallets and accounts from interacting with EU service providers. So, yeah, more crackdowns coming. I really don't even want to get into that because you've seen that coming too. But this is a good thread by Vanessa Harris. Go give her a follow. She responded to this news by saying, y'all are still laughing at Monero? Yeah. Again, more people are just connecting the dots. This is making more sense. And if you are Monero Bro, go give her a follow. She's actually looking for Monero people to follow, so now's your chance. Have you heard of Facebook's shadow profiles? Same concept apply. Yeah, let me read this in the next video. I'm kind of tired. It's tax day, so I did like 10 hours of taxes today. I'm kind of burnt out. I'll do that in the next video. Vanessa, if you're watching this, what's up? But that's all I got to say for this video. Basically, we're being more and more vindicated as every day goes by. Not a big deal. Kind of saw it coming, but again, we're not going to be prideful. Just more people just got to get access to good information because there's really not a good amount of quality information out there in crypto land. It's just a whole bunch of grifting, really. And nobody's honestly trying to piece this stuff together and figure out where things are going. And nobody's really looking out for each other. We got to look out for each other, ladies and gentlemen. We got to sort of point out to a lot of people who are just kind of asleep on what's going on in the world, and two, how it is they can protect themselves from all that stuff which is going on in the world. And I think getting to Monero, getting into the Orthodox Church especially, and getting right with Christ is important. And all that stuff is key to, I think, helping our fellow man and helping humanity move forward. So anyways, that's it. Monero Matteo. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for the support. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Hope you guys finish up tax season strong. Remember, we've got the festival on the 15th and 16th at St. Mary of Egypt, Roswell, Georgia, Orthodox Church. It's the Russian one. It's not the Coptic one. Yeah, make sure you go to the Russian one. And then, I'm burnt out on tax, dude. I cannot wait for tax season to be over, dude. Like, that's what the festival's really going to be. No, I'm joking. But anyways, love you guys. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.